my common sense. I don't know. So before I get into the talk, a quick introduction about myself. My name is Anusha Dwivedula. I'm the Director of Product for Enterprise Data Platform, which is the central team within Morningstar, which helps centralize the data, build platforms like Data Lake, Lakehouse. And our core mission is to free the data, to make sure that the data is accessible to everyone within Morningstar, so that we can get new insights into the market faster. So today my goal is to give you all an overview of the business challenges that we faced around data, and give you an overview of our platform that we built in Amazon Web Services, and take you through the entitlements journey using lake formation. And finally end with some business impact and value that we were able to produce with the solution. All right, before I get into the talk, here's the team behind the entitlement framework. It's a global team, a few members in North America, a few members in Mumbai. And I'm really excited to present our work. So let's get started. So I'm gonna take you through a timeline, and just imagine the pre-COVID days when we never imagined that we would get stuck with kids at home, being on Zoom sessions. But 2018 and 2019 is when what I call the problem identification and ideation phase for this. Where I think there were a group of people who cared about the problem of Morningstar not having a central data repository of all of our data. And so when I started at Morningstar, I started as a senior software engineer in the data and analytics group. So one of the tasks that I had to do was to productionize a model that was built by our quantitative research team. Basically, they built the methodology in MATLAB, and I had to convert that into PySpark. It took our team about 18 months in order to productionize that app. For the methodology team, it was just 3 months. And the reason it took us 18 months is not because of the lack of skills, but we actually spent most of our time just figuring out where the right data source is and figuring out the quality of the data, and then making sure that that data is accessible in a centralized location so that we are able to run the PySpark code and produce the output and deliver it to product as feeds. So we wanted to solve this problem. And around 2020 was when we gained business support, and we stabilized the architecture, and we came up with a stable data lake architecture that's built on AWS. Here you see that the basis for this is AWS S3 and Athena. And Morningstar acquired different companies. So there are various data producers, whether it's internal data producers or third-party vendors. So what we did was we built a platform where the producers could drop data into the drop zone, which is basically an S3 bucket. And then we moved that data into a raw zone and make sure that we save the raw files. And we leveraged a third-party tool called Entitlements in order to move the data between different zones. So the reason we went with Entitlements is Entitlements came out of the box with a lot of data connectors and transformation tools. So we didn't want to reinvent the wheel in that scenario. And so Entitlements was moving the data between different zones. And so the next step was, as you can see, from IDS, there was a quality zone where the quality tests run against the data within Data Lake. And the data was made available to the consumers, finally in a ledger format. We made sure that we stored all the history and in an immutable fashion. And eventually, our consumers are able to query the data using Athena in ledger format. Eventually, we had to come up with a snapshot format because it was cumbersome for consumers to consume the full history. So we also made a latest snapshot available to them. So this worked fine. And for securing the data lake, we leveraged AWS Lake Formation at that time. And for those of you who are not aware of AWS Lake Formation, it's just a relational database management style, permissions model to grant and revoke access to data catalog resources, whether it's databases, tables, or columns. And the easy to manage lake formation permissions, they replace that complex S3 bucket policies and the IAM policies. So some of the use cases which I already covered, we use lake formation for securing the data lake. And it also, I'm gonna go into that tag-based access control that's on the AWS website and why we did not go with that in the first place. And it also gives you an option to enable that self-service analytics across your organization. All right, so the first step, the first time when we started using AWS Lake Formation, we've used the resource-based type. There are two types, resource-based and tag-based. So the reason we chose the resource-based was it was just simple. So if you can see here, if I were a data lake administrator, and I have to give access to the three principals, 1, 2, 3, the databases A, B, C. What I had to do is just grant permissions on each table for each principal. So this would have worked fine if there are just limited databases and limited tables. And as you can see in this example, it would be like around 17 grants that I have to make in order to give access to these three principals. But what we, and this is a data dictionary structure that we set up within our data lake, where there is a schema, data set, and database table. And the schema is just a logical grouping where producers can push their data, and there is further categorization around data set, database table. So initially, when we did resource-based, it worked fine. We started giving database level access to our consumers, which means if there are 100 tables within a database, then a consumer would get access to all 100 tables. But as we started scaling and there were more, like fine-grained entitlement needs, for example, we had a scenario where a private and public tables had to fit into the same database, which means that we could just not do the database level entitlements. We had to go one level down and give table level entitlements to private, public. And this complicated our entitlements. So at that time, we figured like if there were a way for us to somehow tag these resources as public and private, it would save a lot of time and a lot of complexity. So then we entered the 2021 first half, which is scaling phase, which is when we realized this problem in the first place. And at that time, Lake Formation released the tag-based entitlements, so which came to our rescue. And this is where, as you can see in our previous example, it was resource-based where we had to give access at each table level, but now we could actually tag it. And here you can see tags are nothing but key value pairs. And so here you can see the key is a module and the value is sales, customer orders. And so the entitlement looks much simpler, where the first step is to assign tags for each of the resources, which is a one-time thing that we have to do. And then later the grants to these principals is much more simpler. So that's the benefit that we got out of tags. And in practice, as we enhanced our data dictionary model, you saw the namespace data group. And now we added something called data set access control, which would tell us whether a resource is generally available, contractually protected, or aspect of it. this one. That helps. Okay. All right. I just reset the mic and looks like the inference is not there. All right, so we are still in 2021 first half, so which is when we decided to move to the tag-based entitlement, as I mentioned. And so in practice, as you can see, we've enhanced our data dictionary model to add the data access control, which would tag our resources as generally available contextually protected, which simplified our overall entitlement model a lot. So 2021, I had to divide it into two phases. It was an eventful year for me personally and professionally because we had a lot of problems to solve. And then I also delivered a baby at the end of 2021. So the second half was more of where we, realized some more performance needs from our customers.